Hello, everybody. Welcome to Just the Tip Tuesday. We are here with not Gregory.
No, not
Greg's
Greg.
not here. My name's Garrick. I'm here. Greg's not here. He couldn't be here, so we filled him in with a little man in a little suit. Christopher Cornish. How are you, Chris?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Today we're going to talk about common mistakes that first-time homebuyers make. Looking for a home before applying for a mortgage.
I don't think it's the best idea. You definitely want to have a general idea of what you're going to qualify for. Obviously you can't get a loan until you have an executed purchase contract, but you definitely want to know what your options are. So before actually going out there and wasting a realtor's time by looking at a house that you actually can't afford, I would definitely recommend looking into the mortgage first and seeing exactly what you qualify for, what that would entail, and so forth.
Talking to only one lender. What?
It's the silliest thing you could do.
It's the silliest thing you could do. What about wearing a suit on a Saturday? Is that a silly thing to do?
It depends. Depends on the occasion.
Talking to one letter is ridiculous. So what was the study? See, who did the study? Somebody did a study. We'll put a stat up here. In 2018 alone, there was about 7.1 million mortgages closed. 47 or 48% of people went with the first mortgage option, left between $1,500 and $3,000 on the table in rate alone. That is not any closing costs or any fees that they could have been waived. And if you multiply that out,
Wasn't it between $8 and like $15 billion?
yeah, it's like
Something
a
like that.
couple
Yeah.
$1 billion left on the table. You have the ability to save about $1,500 just by getting a second quote. Quote number 2. You don't got to go talk to 10 people. Just a second quote. Buying more house than you can afford.
Well, regulations won't allow you to
They
some
will. They'll
extent.
let you get there.
Yeah.
They'll let you get there because your liabilities, your debt to income ratio. What he means is that you have a debt to income ratio. So you have income that you have to prove, your ability to repay, and you have all your liabilities, including the house payment. And they won't let that exceed certain thresholds for certain loan types. Conventional loan can be 43%, VA can be up to 60%. But most are between that 40 and 50% mark. So they do try to regulate that, by looking at your monthly obligations and not letting you tie up too much of it. But it is common that you get into a house that's got an expensive HOA and a bunch of taxes, and your house broke. People do it with cars too. They get a huge car payment because they like the car, and then a couple months down the road, they're like, geez, this is huge. Moving too quickly. So, Christopher, how long were you dating your ex before you moved in with her?
Moving too quickly. So it depends on how you look at the question. Are we talking about moving
We're
houses?
not talking about relationships.
No, we're not talking about relationships. We're talking about mortgages. So moving like from one house to another, I don't think that would necessarily be too quick. It just depends. And then in terms of like a mortgage, I mean, you obviously want to jump on opportunity, but you also want to see what options are out there.
What's the difference
So-
between a good negotiator and a great negotiator?
A great negotiator knows when to say yes,
Knows when to say yes. Okay.
or in this case, close and choose a lender.
So you don't want to just wait for rates to go down. You
No.
at some point have to say, okay, this is my deal. Let's take it.
Yeah, I think people fixate on like the cost or the credit associated with a certain interest rate or what the actual interest rate is currently, and they fail to look at the bigger picture. So, they're currently in a 4 or
You're a big
4.5%, and they're looking at a 2.75 or 2.875. At a certain point, it's time to just move forward and, actually get a savings.
Draining your savings to get into a house. You can get a house with as little as 3% down, 3.5% FHA, 3% conventional. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. I wouldn't recommend it, but we do commonly see, people scrounging together money from different bank accounts to get that down payment together. Keep in mind, if you have 3% down, if you have a $100,000 house, you're putting 3% down. That would be $3,000. You have to pay your closing costs on top of that. So you got to pay title. You're gonna have to prepay a year of your homeowner's insurance, 6 months of property taxes, an appraisal, $500. And there's no way you can finance that in. There is a way that it can be paid by the seller or in the loan. It's called a seller's concession, and your realtor has to negotiate that when you consummate the deal. And then you can say, okay, they're going to pay $3,000 of closing costs, and then you can mitigate the amount of out-of-pocket expenses that way. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. You're buying a house. It's better than draining your savings for a new purse or something, whatever people have drained their savings for.
Yeah. I think it's important to look at the different scenarios. So, 5% down versus 10 versus 20, you have to look and see what makes the most sense. Because if you can get a better interest rate with a little bit more money down, you have to look at the big picture, obviously, and see whether or not it's worth it, because you might be able to get a better interest rate. But it's not necessary to, put down 20% or 30%.
The biggest threshold is 20% because of mortgage insurance. You don't recoup that, right? So if you're deciding, should I go 20% or less, if you can go more than 20, you definitely want to, because that, a couple $100 you pay a month in mortgage insurance goes nowhere. You'll never get that back. At least if you put the 20% down, everything you're paying every month, what's not going to interest is going to your principal balance. So you're building equity over time in your home. If you're paying mortgage insurance on top of that, you're not doing that at all. So I guess what I would say is, like, where's that money at? How much is that money earning where it's at? And then what would it actually cost annually to get the financing percentage rate there? And how much is that monthly expense, that mortgage insurance, and what percentage of that, when you look at like what that money would yield, would equal? So.
And tying it back to like a first-time home buyer, you have to look at how much of your savings that's actually making up. So if you're thinking about doing 20% down and that's all of your savings, I would probably not recommend it, because obviously you want to have some cushion. But if it's, a very small portion of what you have in savings, it's definitely worth putting down 20%, like you said.
That's all. Have fun, guys. Have a great week. If you have any questions, let us know. If you want us to explain any of that more, or you have any questions as a first-time home buyer, let us know. We can have Christopher personally answer your question.
Yeah.
And you can also choose a color of a suit that he should get. They're all blue. So we're trying to decide black or gray. So let us know. Have a great week. See ya.